What's up? This is Conrad from GOG Boxing. I'm going to be coughing a little bit. I'm going to explain that. But I want to start out by saying, hey, all you subscribers, really thanks a lot. And that's why I'm recording this for all 92 of you, which maybe isn't, millions, but but I appreciate every one of you. I haven't recorded anything lately because I got sick. I got the flu. It was really nasty and bad. I'm not sure what it was. But I've been self-isolating a bit, and I wanted to talk about that, and here's why. For those of you younger guys who are training, first we'll talk about this, then we'll get into the Lomachenko fight. But for those of you that are training, I know how hard it is not to box, not to get back in the gym, not to work out on your own when you've been sick or you're feeling sick. Look, be careful. And this is why I'm going to take it easy. And I'm not going to do as many videos for a few weeks here, at least not active videos. Here's why. If it turns out that you have COVID, right? The problem with COVID, and trust me on this, because in my real life job, I work as a risk intel consultant. We do a lot of research. We have to read all this stuff all the time and advise people. Now, whether you think it's a conspiracy or you don't like COVID, you don't want masks, just listen to this one point. If you get COVID, the stats are pretty clear now that a very large percentage of even people that don't have symptoms, it might even be 70%, they have some type of heart damage. That's damage to the wall of the heart. What this can lead to is something called myocardia, or mecardia, however you want to pronounce it, which what this means is you may feel fine, but if you overexert yourself, you're scarring up your heart and you're going to have a heart attack. We actually know through a business associate of mine, a guy, he had it, he felt fine, 3 weeks later he's working out and he just dropped from a heart attack and he was in great shape and all that. So, bearing in mind that I'm not young, I'm going to kind of take it easy. I wanted to put up some cool videos of different ways to slip, using how to parry, how you should do it, things, gym rat type things, but we'll get to those in the future. But I just wanted to warn you on that, and also to say I appreciate you guys for subscribing and your comments. Even if you don't like stuff, you can comment. And since I'm a little still not up to myself, it's a little bit like asthma after you have this stuff. But let's talk about the Lomachenko fight, right? Teofimo Lopez, sorry about that. Teofimo Lopez, new champ, more power to him. Lomachenko, back in Ukraine, there's talk of he's had shoulder surgery, all kinds of things. And just because everyone's got an opinion, I've got an opinion too. And being a little bit older and dealing with injuries and stuff, let's talk very quickly about what Teofimo Lopez obviously did right, what Lomachenko did and didn't do, and maybe let's bring some reality back to this conversation, because just my opinion, and who am I, but we can all have our opinion, is now there's a lot of people dogging on Lomachenko, saying he was overrated, he was Loma God, all that. He was really nothing. Oh, come on, guys. No, that's taking it too far. There's also people talking about Teofimo Lopez being the absolute future, the next Roberto Duran. I've even seen that. Wait, hold on. I'm not saying he can't be, but let's bring some reality to this. First of all, let's talk about what Teofimo Lopez did right, and talk about how that fight looked. Now, a lot of people talked about Lomachenko doing almost nothing at the beginning of the fight. I mean, through 6 rounds, it was really frustrating if you're watching it, not even just if you're a Lomachenko fan, but just as a boxing fan, especially the first couple rounds, they were just almost mind-blowing. I mean, Lomachenko just wasn't doing anything. Now, let's give Lopez credit here. A couple of things that you could pick up right off if you go back and watch it, if you haven't already heard this. First of all, it's clear Lomachenko did respect Lopez's power. You should, after that knockout, when he knocked out Kami. But the second thing is that probably Lomachenko was a little bit put off by the speed, and you got to give Lopez credit. He had great speed, and we know he's got pop, and you know he's going to be aggressive. So saying that Lomachenko it was all strategy. That's not giving credit to Lopez. And there's another thing. Even in the beginning, you saw that Lopez had really prepared for this, or his father had prepared him, because when Lomachenko would do that Lomachenko style slip to his right, because remember, he's fighting as a southpaw, so he would slip to his right hand side, and what he does is he gets out of that jab, and then he does his shifts, or he pivots around, however you want to describe it, and he's just famous for that. And once he gets into that, he's on one side, then he goes the other, but that first step to the side, and Lopez and his father talked about that they go, that's his only move. I don't think that's his only move. But what did he do to counter it? Well, a couple of things. One, he pivoted with them right at the start, and since you would see Teofimo Lopez kind of fight out of what would be kind of a quasi Philly shell, right? And when Lomachenko would start that move, he would pivot, or he would catch him with his shoulder while he's pivoting, or even push off, especially later in the fight. And that did for sure took a lot out of that quick first step on Lomachenko's move. So you got the power, you got the speed, and you've got a smart strategy coming in to pivot off that and keep Lomachenko from getting you into that, that washing machine, which is what he seemed to be able to do with almost everybody. You saw it with Linares, you saw it with Pedraza, you saw it literally with Campbell, everybody. He sooner or later gets people into that washing machine, which he did later in the fight. Now, so there you got to give Lopez credit just for training. He was fast, he's got that power, but he also really planned for that first entrance, in that first move that Lomachenko would pull off. And I think that probably did put Lomachenko off. Now, I do think that, they talk about the downloading and the strategy. I think that Lomachenko, for sure, first couple rounds you could put down to that. He was extremely wary, he wasn't doing anything. But now let's talk about some other issues with Lomachenko. First of all, when I watched that fight, right at the beginning, the first round, I was like, oh man, this does not look good. Why? A couple of things. One, if you watch that fight and you see Lomachenko's footwork, and when he goes forward and back, he doesn't seem to have the balance that you've seen, the surreal balance that you've seen in the other fights. Right? He just doesn't seem to have it. It seems like like he comes on his back foot. He almost seems wobbly a couple of times when he's going back and forth. He also seemed soft. Now, if you looked at the weigh-in, maybe you didn't see it, right? But you know how it is when you're getting a little older and you look in front of the mirror with your shirt off and you can look good, right? But then when you look at yourself, you see yourself from a distance. Even if you are generally in shape, you can tell when you're kind of pudgy, and you look a little bit. He looked kind of top-heavy, almost in that dad pudgy way. Now, let's not exaggerate, but it didn't look like Lomachenko has always looked. Now, maybe he tried to put on weight for the fight, tried to be stronger, and it backfired for him. But it looked like he was a little bit soft, a little bit top-heavy, and his balance just wasn't quite right. Now, there's a couple reasons why that could have happened. One, just trying to put on weight to compete. But then there's another issue. When Lomachenko, right at the beginning, two things. When you see him fight, a lot of times he comes in here and he's in that southpaw, and he's real active with that lead hand, and faking whatever. But even when he's doing that, what you typically didn't see a lot of in his last fights were him coming in with a lower shoulder, right? A lower, in that fight I noticed right off, here he is coming in, and he's not fighting more like with his shoulder higher. Now, he moves a lot, so it's hard to tell, but if he's not fighting the same way. That lead hand is not as active. And when he threw some jabs, they didn't look right. They looked kind of like, I don't know, it was really strange. So right in the beginning, something didn't look right. Now, you can say, oh, the shoulder injury, that's an excuse in the surgery. He can be used in his excuse, but it kind of didn't look, certainly didn't look like the Lomachenko who fought Pedraza. Certainly didn't look like, he fought Linares with really an injured shoulder, and still in those fights from the very beginning, maybe he wasn't throwing his hook with his right hand as much, especially I noticed in the Pedraza fight. But the jabs were sharp, they were spot on right from the start, even in the feeling out state. Now, What could have happened? Well, there's talk of the shoulder. There's talk of even his nose. After that fight with Lopez, his nose looked terrible. But you know, if Lopez hits you in the face, your nose might look terrible. But they said he lost some sparring time. For me, that could be believable because honestly, he looked like a guy that came in that hadn't done enough sparring. And I'm not saying he wasn't in shape, but even Lopez said he was huffing and puffing towards the end. And that's after, you know, he wasn't very active in the first rounds. He didn't quite look like the Lomachenko of old. He just didn't. Okay, he just didn't. Not saying that you can't credit Lopez for this. Like I said, Lopez took him out of his strategy in the beginning in pivoting off those moves. But it did look kind of weird. It did look kind of strange. Now, when you get into the later rounds, especially part of the 7th round, then the 8th, 9th, 10th, and the 11th, suddenly you see Lomachenko really putting the pressure on, especially the 11th round. Parts of it just look like vintage Lomachenko, okay? Which is, you know, you say, oh, well, he waited for Lopez to get tired or whatever. Well, Lopez is the younger guy, and even Lopez says he was huffing and puffing, and but suddenly Lomachenko really came in there. That kind of looks like a guy who's got shoulder issues, or he's got some kind of issues, and he's gotten warmed up. Now, another issue could be 14-month layoff. Lopez and his father talked about how that could really impact him. I think all this stuff impacted him, but it doesn't take away from Lopez winning the fight because that 12th round was really something, right? So I would say let's not knock Lomachenko because actually if you just beat on Lomachenko, you're taking away from Lopez's victory. That's the first thing. The second thing is let's not say that Lopez didn't deserve this win because from a strategic perspective and gutting it out at the end, especially after several rounds, which there were times when it really wasn't going Lopez's way when Lomachenko was landing all those combos. He was using his head a little bit too, but still, that 12th round was something else, and that's a great credit to Lopez. But now, let's talk about Lopez and where he stands right now. Just my opinion. I'm sure I'll get a bunch of freaking dislikes on this. Take a look at Lopez, where he really stands. Now, he's pulled off a coup. He's won those belts, but he's only had 16 fights. 16 fights. That 16 fights at his age is a prospect. Now, you can't call him a prospect because he's a champ. But if you look at him, you're going to have to give this guy needs time to grow, and he needs to be careful going forward. And I'll tell you why. Lomachenko, as good as he is and as much as he moves, he's only got a 65.5-inch reach. And he's small, right? And he didn't get knocked out. In fact, I didn't really think he got stunned. I thought he took some body shots that hurt him once in a while, but you know, the vaunted Lopez power didn't knock out Lomachenko, and he's a small guy. He should be fighting one weight class lower, maybe even two. Okay, they fought at 135. Now, they've talked about Lopez probably won't be able to stay at 135 forever, and when he came into the fight, I don't know how much he weighed, but he looked like he was a lot bigger than Lomachenko in that first and second round, I tell you. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that Lopez is overrated? No. But if he goes up to 140, man, there are some sharks there. There really are some sharks there. Now think about this. You got Ramirez. You got Josh Taylor. You got Prograis. Who else do you got? Oh, Zepeda. You got Victor Postol, who may be yesterday's news. But, I mean, look at all these guys. These guys are bigger. They're taller. They've got a longer reach. Everybody is going to have a reach advantage on Lopez. His reach is probably around, 68 inches somewhere. All these guys are going to have 69, 70. Postol's got like a 73-inch reach, right? They're a little bit taller. We saw Lopez had trouble with Nakatani, who has like a 71-inch reach, but not the most overwhelming fighter, but he did have trouble with that. But he's not going to have such a reach advantage. The power advantage may or may not be negated. We'll see how he grows into this. But these guys are sharks, and they're not gonna be really even that scared of his power. Not saying that he can't knock people out, but it's going to be a different game there. And if you get up to 147, well, then you've got Terrence Crawford, you got Spence, and these guys. So where do we? You even got Virgil Ortiz, who I'm really high on at 147. Who I don't know if he can get down to 140 or not. So what do we think about Lopez? Now, I think we've got a young champ who's got the world in front of him. I wonder if 135 shouldn't just be his weight, because you take that step up and every single guy in the top 10 is going to have, Maurice Hooker, all these guys are going to have a reach advantage on you, and maybe your power is not going to dwarf him. And there's one other issue there. He had trouble with Nakatani. Nakatani, who I don't think is the greatest fighter, did have good reach with like a 71-inch reach, but look how Lopez likes to fight. He fights out of that kind of quasi sort of Philly shell. I don't even know if it's really Philly shell, because he's kind of coming forward, he's leaning forward, he's got his face forward, and it's here, and he's got some moves and everything. But boy, I tell you, when you get into guys with longer reach, he may have to adapt that style. Can he adapt? Can he get into something that's a little bit more defensive? I don't know. So if you're still listening, I would just say this. Let's not knock Lomachenko, and let's not get too high about Lopez, although let's celebrate that win. And I'm really curious to see what goes forward, because there's all kinds of people calling him out now. And we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, thanks a lot. I hope you like this. Like, subscribe, stick with me. I'm going to get back into the boxing videos and more little tips and stuff just from one gym rat to another in the future. See you soon.